Welcome back on the mat. So a block can come in handy for this practice. Maybe just have a block close at hand. And we'll start in a seated position. Walk your hands out in front. So you stay in the seated position, just reaching forwards. Chest moving forwards, you still have weight on the sit bones. With an inhale, lift your head, and exhale, walk your hands over to one side. Once again, inhale, lift your head, walk the hands back, and exhale over to the other side. Inhale, head up, walk your hands back to center, and coming up into a seated position. You can place your right hand onto your left knee, opposite hand behind the back. Inhale to get length in your back. Exhale, twist and look over your back shoulder. Inhale, come back to center. Switch, left hand, right knee. Inhale, halfway lift while lifting. On halfway, and exhale, twist. In breath, bring it back to center. Now you'll place your right forearm onto the mat next to your body. Take your opposite arm up on inhale. Reach up, pull shoulder closer to ear, and then start to reach with the arm over to the side. You can lock at the elbow joint. Just keep reaching. Keep the left sit bone on the floor. Taking it back up, and exhale, bring your arm down. Placing the left forearm onto the mat. Inhale, take the right arm up. And then same thing. Reach over to the wall. Keep the sit bone firmly on the mat. Inhale, arm up, and exhale. Bring it down. And we get to an all fours position. And in all fours, shift weight back and forth. So you've got hands below the shoulders, but you're pushing shoulders slightly past the fingers. And then you shift weight back. Shifting weight forwards and back. Let's keep moving. As you get into a neutral position, tuck your toes, take your hips up into a downward facing dog. Inhale, take your right leg up to ceiling. Exhale, step right foot in between hands. Now bring your back knee down. The idea is going to be to close the gap between the upper hamstring and the calf muscles. So hands out in front. You're going to walk the back knee closer to the front of the mat. Push your knee past your toe, well, past the toes, and get the heel to lift off the mat. So this is perfectly safe with the knee pushing past the toes because we've got the upper hamstring pushing into the calf muscle, and we have the hands here for support. If you had to feel pain in the knee, then you can most definitely back out a little bit because you don't want to experience pain on the floor or on the mat. Now, the heel that's not touching the mat, you actively work it down towards the floor to give that ankle a bit of a stretch. Now shift weight back, position hands onto the mat. Now we've got a very short stance because we pull the back knee closer in. Keep the left hand on the mat. Inhale, take the right arm up. Exhale, bring the right hand down. Straighten the back leg, step the right foot back and readjust into a plank position. Bring your knees down. Exhale, chest and chin down. Relax onto floor. Inhale, we do that very same. Baby cobra, lifting the hands. Exhale, hands back down, tuck toes. Modify child's pose, taking it up into downward facing dog. Inhale, raise your left leg. Exhale, position left foot in between hands. Bring your back knee down. As you walk your hands out in front, you will have to reposition the back knee, bring it forwards, pushing the left knee past the left toes. Same thing happening here. We've got the heel lifting off the mat, and this is where we're getting a bit of a stretch into the ankle. And we also get the left knee joint in extreme flexion, which is a good thing. It's good to work with the joints in its extremities. If we simply keep the legs at a 90-degree angle, think of your seated position by your desk, for instance, or on a couch. That's very comfortable for the knee joints, but it's not really incredibly beneficial. I want to move the joint in its extreme positions. Now, shifting weight back, as you simply push weight back, you'll find that we've got a very short lunge position, right hand below the right shoulder, left arm goes up. Exhale, bring your left hand down, straighten the back leg, reposition the feet into a normal plank stance and place your knees down. Exhale, chest and chin down. Relax onto the floor. Inhale, baby cobra. One step further, keep the chest up, reach to the back wall with your hands. And maybe lift a little bit higher. Just working into the back, strengthening the back a little bit. Bring your hands back down, tuck your toes, pushing back into child's pose, taking your hips up, downward facing dog position. Bending into knees, look up. Inhale, feet in between hands, halfway lift. Exhale, forward bend. Inhale, bend your knees, reach for the block, find your block, and bring your hands in line with the shoulders as you lift in the chest. So actively squeeze to the midline. Feel the tricep muscles engaging as you do so. And exhale, straighten your legs, come up. Part your feet, get the block in between your legs, so just above the knees. The idea is to squeeze towards the midline. Now this helps a lot when it comes to squatting down, bending into knees. If we start to make use of the adductor muscles, it's just a better muscle activation and you'll be able to hold the posture more comfortably. So squeeze to the midline, use an inhale, bend into your knees, bring the hands in line with the shoulders. We don't have to reach up to ceiling right now, it's more about the legs. So you're squeezing to the midline and notice the difference between having the block in between legs compared to not having the block. Take a nice deep in-breath. Exhale into a forward bend, still squeezing the block in between legs. Inhale, halfway lift, and this is where you can put the block aside. Exhale, step it back into a plank shape. Now in our plank, you'll bring knees down. Exhale, chest and chin down. Relax onto the floor. Inhale, lift your chest, keep hands on the mat. And now bend your knees, work your heels closer to your glutes. Don't use too much upper body strength. Instead, focus on using your spinal muscles, your back muscles, to lift the chest. Bring your legs back down, tuck toes, lower the chest, and then push back into a child's pose. From there, downward facing dog. Inhale, raise your right leg. Keep your right leg up, flex your foot. You want to keep the right leg straight. If the hamstrings are tight, bend into the left knee. But we want a straight line from the hands all along the back, all the way to the right heel. Exhale, bring your right leg down, downward facing dog, and inhale, take your left leg up. Both arms straight, left hip in line with the right hip. Breath is consistent. In and out through your nose. Exhale. Bring your left leg down. Bend into your knees and place knees onto the mat. You're going to take your block, flip it sideways so it's a little bit higher. Look at the corner, the front corner of the mat, and then place the block sort of in line in a diagonal angle out to the side. Placing right hand onto the block, left hand slightly out to the side. Start to bring your right shoulder down to the mat and looking towards the left elbow. So we're actively working the right shoulder down with the right arm staying straight. Opening up in the chest area. Inhale. Slowly come up. We'll switch. So once again, the positioning of the block is quite important. I'll place it out to the side, diagonal sort of angle. As for the right hand, I'm going to be bearing some weight on that hand, so you find a position that's comfortable. A lock at the left elbow joint. Actively work the left shoulder down towards the floor. You're twisting away from the left hand. Inhale, coming back up. Once again, putting the block aside. And now for our more traditional puppy stretch. It's more for the front parts of the shoulders, the anterior deltoids. Bring your hands out in front. And all you think about doing is getting your armpits closer to the floor. You can look up in between the hands. But we keep the hips more or less in line with the knees. So you don't shift the hips forwards too much. You also don't push back all too much. You'll use the inhale to make your way back up. So we're not spending too much time in these stretches. Tuck toes, lifting your hips into a downward facing dog position. Getting back to balancing, bend into knees, look up, inhale, position feet in between hands, halfway lift. Exhale, forward bend. Inhale, arms to ceiling. Exhale, mountain pose. Now I'm going to give you two options. Option one is to do tree pose without the block. Option two would be to do it with a block. If you're going to stand on a block, the balance will be a little bit more challenging. So decide what's going to work for you today. I'll demonstrate with the block, so right foot can go onto the block. And first you sort of get the feet to match. Then you bring your leg up. You can decide if you want to keep your foot on the calf muscle or onto the inner thigh. Once you've got your position, bring hands to prayer and focus on one spot. So if you are standing on a foam block, like me, the ankle's going to work a little bit harder to maintain the balance. If it's a harder block, like a cork block, for instance, or a wooden block, it should be a bit easier. Same thing goes if you're perhaps using a book. That just allows you to be a little bit higher off the floor. It really teaches you to find stability through your core as you balance on the block, especially once again, a foam block that's not as hard. Find a spot to focus on. It's a good time to not just improve your balance, but also to strengthen your ankle. Breath can be deep and slow. The grounding leg is straight, but there's softness in the knee joint. You don't hyperextend the knee and lock it out. If you lose your balance, you can just get back into it. You might find that it has quite a nice training effect on the foot muscles, the ankle, the calf muscle. It's time to get out of this one, so you can bring your hands down and let the foot hover if you are balancing on a block, and then bring it down. You might even find that there's nice activation through the glutes. So very basic exercise, but it challenges the body in many different areas, which is quite good. So let's get onto the opposite side. If you are balancing on the block, once again, get the feet to match, and then you get into the position that you want to be in. You just don't want the foot to rest on the knee joint, because we already have all our weight on the left leg. You wouldn't want to push into the knee in a sort of opposite direction. So be mindful of the joints. Find your balance and hold. And it's okay to lose your balance. It's really not a big deal. It takes practice. Sure, you will find some form of benefit if you draw navel to spine and you at least focus on one spot. Having a focal point helps a lot with yoga postures, especially when it comes to the more advanced postures. Finding a spot to focus on. Breath is still deep and slow. Fighting with the balance, trying to not fall out of the posture. It's time to get out of this one. So you can bring the hands down, let the foot hover, and then bring it all the way down. I personally can feel how the second leg worked a little bit harder to keep the balance, especially the foot muscles. Now let's step to the front end of the mat. Feet can be together, and I'll take arms up. Exhale, forward bend, head to shins. In-breath, halfway lift. Plant your hands and exhale, step back. Bring your knees down. Exhale, chest and chin down. Relax onto the mat, and we once again do our baby cobra, so hands floating off the floor. Bring your hands down, tuck toes, pushing back to child's pose, and then into a downward facing dog. Now you can bring your knees down, untuck the toes, and sit back into a comfortable child's pose. Inhale. Make your way back up onto all fours, but then push away from the mat and come up onto your knees. It's a very basic little stretch for the shoulders. Bring your left arm around your back. Get your left hand to the outside of the right of your waist. Grip hold of your hand and actively pull your hand forwards. So you're actively pulling, getting a bit of a stretch in the left shoulder joint. Now we'll do the opposite side. Let go. Take your right arm around. Find the right hand and pull with the left hand. Release. Bring your hands onto the mat, tuck your toes, taking it up into downward facing dog. On inhale, take your right leg up. Exhale, step right foot in between hands. Step your back foot in slightly and come up. Two options with the hand placement. So you can find your forearms or possibly elbows behind your back, or you can get your hands to pray behind your back. We're working in the shoulders a little bit, so if you can't go with option 2, then option 1 will do for today. Both legs straight, inhale to lift in chest, exhale, come down halfway. So aim to keep length in your back, feel the right hip pulling back, and just keep length in your spine. Should you feel comfortable in this position, with the next exhale you can go a little bit deeper. But a halfway lift shape is also fine. The idea is to work into the arms and the shoulders. Now we're just adding a little bit of hamstring work. Inhale, make your way up. Releasing the hands onto the mat, bend into your knee, step it back into plank. We'll maintain the vinyasa flow, so bring your knees down, exhale, chest and chin down. Relax onto the floor. This time round, cobra pose, push away from the mat, shoulders away from ears, hips still on the floor. Tuck your toes, exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, raise your left leg. Exhale, position left foot in between hands, step your back foot closer and pivot your back foot as you come up. Once again, your two options, hands to prayer or gripping hold of the forearms. Inhale, lengthen in chest. Exhale, lean forwards into that L shape. Feel that you're pulling the left hip back. One more in breath. Exhale, maybe a little bit deeper, but it's not a must. It's not so much about pulling the elbows back or up to ceiling. It's more about drawing shoulders away from ears. Using in-breath to make your way back up. Exhale, releasing hands onto mat, bend into the front knee, stepping it back into a plank position. We hold the plank just for a bit of core strengthening. If it's really too intense, place your knees onto the mat, but keep length in your spine as you do so. Otherwise, just hold for another 10 seconds. Bring your knees down onto the mat. Take your right hand a little bit to the outside. Thread your left arm through, and as you place left shoulder onto the mat, walk your right arm out in front. So over your head, straight to the front of the room or studio. If you find that the hips are pulling to the right, pull the hips back into alignment. You're going to find that it gives you a nicer stretch close to the shoulder blade. You can firstly bring the right hand back, more or less underneath the shoulder, pushing back up. And then we'll switch. You get the left hand slightly to the outside, thread your right arm through, come down, walk your left arm out in front, pull the hip square. And bring your hand back underneath the shoulder, pushing back up to an all fours position. We'll make our way into a seated position from here, so you can simply just get into seated. Take your arms behind your body, get the hands or the baby fingers, the pinkies to touch, and walk your hands further away from the body. So once you've got the hands behind the body, start to lift into your chest and feel the stretch that you create by pulling the shoulders back and down. Slowly bring the hands back. Cross your legs, get into a seated position. So for the first time in the practice, the breathing is going to be a little bit faster. So you'll get the thumbs on the backs of the shoulders with the other fingers in the front. Elbows in line with the shoulders, but shoulders drawn down. So you don't want to lift elbows up and create tension. You'll sit with a straight spine. You can keep your eyes open or close your eyes. I'm going to go with the option of closing eyes. The breathing pattern is going to be a bit faster. So it's going to be inhale, rotating to the left. Exhale, rotating to the right. So a quick demonstration, it would look like this. So we're simply going to move. And as we continue with this movement, you'll find that you get more mobility in the back and you'll be able to rotate a little bit more and more and more. So stay rooted through the sit bones. You don't want the lower body to move too much. It's all happening from the shoulders, the twisting, the length in the spine is going to allow for us to work into the rotator muscles. Inhales and exhales through your nose, fast inhalations and exhales. Inhale to left, exhale to right. Inhale and let's get going. The head remains still. It's just following the movement of the spine. You can come back to center, take a full deep inhale. Hold your breath after full inhalation, squeeze at the base of the spine, draw navel to spine and also bring your chin down slightly. Squeeze and hold. And exhale, empty your lungs, bring your arms down. And if your eyes were shut, you can slowly open your eyes. Right, so for one more little shoulder exercise, you're going to interlace your fingers, Get your hands behind your head. Now, the elbows might naturally point forward slightly. Actively push your hands into the back of your head and broaden in the chest by pulling your elbows to the back wall. Push your head into your hands as you push hands into your head, and just get a nice straight spine and hold this position. So it's not relaxing, you're constantly working the elbows back. And exhale, releasing, bringing your hands back down. Straighten your legs. As you do so, find your block. Sit on the block so you can lift the hips to get onto the block. Instead of flexing with the feet, let's point and get a bit of a stretch in the front parts of the ankles. Take a full deep inhale. On exhale, slide your hands down your legs, potentially finding your feet and turning it into a forward bend. Don't worry too much about the spine rounding. We've got a bit of freedom in this forward bend, seeing as though we're changing it up. Use your inhale to do a halfway lift and exhale. Release. Stay on the block. Bend your knees. Get soles of the feet together. Bring your heels as close to the block as you can. And as you do so, work your knees down to the floor. So you interlace fingers around the feet and you actively work your knees down. Get length in your chest or in your spine, lifting in the chest. Option of staying here, or option of pulling your chest forward slightly. So working your chest and chin forwards, keeping length in your back. The focus wasn't on hip opening at all. I'm just doing a little bit of a groin stretch, slight bit of a hip opener before we get onto our backs. Inhale, making your way back up. Exhale, release the feet. You can now put the block aside. We might use it in corpse pose again. But slowly relax all the way down onto the mat. So straighten both legs, point with the toes just before we do corpse pose. Reach with your arms overhead. Interlock your thumbs. Reach to the back wall with the fingers. Reach to the front wall with the toes and lengthen as much as you can. You might find the lower back pulling away from the mat. To counter that, tilt your pelvis and actively work your lower back down. You'll feel the core working more. You'll feel the glute muscles engaging better, maybe even the quads. So hold this position, just grow as tall as you possibly can. Keep breathing, even though you've got contraction in the core. Hold it there. And then with an exhale, just go soft on the mat. It's time for our corpse pose. So I'm going to be using the block and place it below the head. So you can sort of rest your head on the block. It's just going to give it a slightly different sensation. It's maybe a bit easier to get length in the neck, tucking the chin slightly. Allow the feet to drop out to the sides. The hands to be relaxed, fingers curling in naturally. And most importantly, with the eyes being closed, allow your breath to be natural. Scan your body and make sure you're not holding any tension anywhere in the body. And you can stay in this corpse pose for as long as you like.